it's a means to an end, and certainly in respect of new users, I think if you're going to give them a life-changing or a computer life-changing thing like moving from Windows, it needs to be as familiar as possible prior to their move. And if they're entering a new system with a load of with an absence of all the drivers and features that they're used to with Windows, it's just going to get them turning back. I think it's a gradual process. Obviously to move people away from Windows onto Linux, and I think things like Mint and Sabian in my case does assist that.
I agree to some extent. I think lots of people tend to think of Fedora or Debian or something as the free choices, but even when you look very closely, you find they aren't following the strict requirements of the FSF, so they won't be listed as a free distribution. They just tend to put the barrier somewhere different, so they might have some firmware, and I think as far as applications are concerned and drivers to a certain extent, they will not give you the proprietary graphics drivers. But what I'm trying to say here is that none of the distributions are free. It's just that Mint is a bit less, liber free, free in the liber sense.
Well, I'll guarantee you this much: you'll never see RMS running Linux Mint. Make of that what you will. He will never use Linux Mint.
But the way that Mint approaches it, and I've said something very similar before in the past. When people used Internet Explorer and couldn't imagine using anything else but Internet Explorer, Firefox pops up and people use that. Then they see that maybe a alternative to Internet Explorer is viable. Then they start looking at other alternatives, and I think it's a means to an end. And I remember covering GNU Sense, a distro based on Ubuntu, a few years back, and I can remember saying at the time it was obviously all free software, and I can remember saying it just wouldn't appeal to somebody who was looking to come to Linux from Windows, because all the things that they're familiar with, all the things that they take for granted, which Windows does, weren't present, and the drivers, the proprietary software, that type of thing. And unfortunately, it's not ideal because a lot of the free and open source solutions are better than the proprietary alternatives. But in order to get people looking at them in the first place, I think you have to offer a level of familiarity and compatibility with what they were previously using, in my opinion.
Well, one of the things that I try to sort of think about it like this is that both Apple and Microsoft are direct. They're in the same game. They both offer, the end user coming from either Windows or OS X, they have no clue about open or closed or what any of that means. All they see is they can go into a shop and buy, it's a commercial mindset, they can go and buy a computer and start their operating system and install their programs, and they just go and download or buy applications are compatible with that. You're comparing apples with apples, essentially. It's two different types of apples. When you stack that up against Linux, it's not just an alternate operating system. It's a whole different mindset that people have got to try and get their head around. It's like, how can this possibly be any good if it's free of charge? It's all these different questions that we know. We know what it's all about. But the problem is, it's not something that's just a ready-made replacement that you can stack alongside Apple or Windows. It's a whole different thing that goes underneath that with free culture and patents and free licensing and sharing the code and the community contributing. That's a whole different thing, and you can't lecture people on that. You can't when they say, right, what options do I have? I'm used to Windows, or I might try Apple. Well, Apple is an easy thing to put alongside that because it works on the same model as Windows does, just in its own way. So, and then when you put that aside next to Linux, you've then got to explain all this whole backtail of what makes Linux what it is. The development model, and all they're sitting thinking is, I only want an operating system, I only want a computer.
Mm. Yeah. Now, I'm of a similar opinion to you, and like I say, I think the future, the way forward for Windows users to come to Linux is, like we say, the familiarity and the software that you used to use in Windows. So sorry, over to you, Rod, 'cause I can hear you.
Yeah, I just want to say something very quick. Usually I use the Wikipedia analogy because lots of people use Wikipedia, and as soon as you mention the collaboration as a paradigm, I think they have some realization of something that's kind of free, and at the same time it's very valuable. I mean, I know lots of people kind of disagree, and they say Wikipedia is not accurate, and you shouldn't cite that. But still, lots of people really appreciate having a very comprehensive and yet free resource to go to. And when you try to explain to them this was created by lots of people contributing and editing things, they get the sense this is like the free operating system. And also, a couple of days ago, I explained to a colleague of mine. She was, she basically was interested in what I was using. I was using Fedora on my desktop. And the way for me to try and sell this thing and to explain it's good was not to talk about price, not to say anything about the price, but to talk about restrictions and trying to find circumstances in which the operating system such as Mac OS X or Windows will restrict the user. And I think we should be very grateful. Microsoft and Apple do lots of things to actually help us here, because they make a lot of they make users feel quite helpless and upset sometimes when they don't let them access certain files, or when they don't let them upgrade or have certain features unless they buy a different edition. Or that's mostly Windows. As far as Mac OS X goes, people cannot change certain things, and they have to pay every time they want to do something. And also there is the compatibility thing. In OS X, it's, I think, a bit harder to run Windows executables compared to in Windows, because you have Wine, and as far as I know, you have to run a virtual machine or something to run a Windows program in Mac OS X. And then you try to put these things together, and you try to explain that Linux has all these values apart from price. Don't mention price. The price is kind of an extra thing, and you show them 3D desktop and they get impressed based on the value, and then when you say the price, it's kind of like an extra thing. Now with Mint, I think it's a really great way. I find if you I haven't actually used it myself, but I know, considering what it has inside it, like I suppose it has Flash inside, or does it?
Well, there's different editions of Linux Mint. Before I go into that, I was just going to say there, just on what you were talking about. For me, this is, I don't know which president was it, said a government for the people, by the people, of the people. Well, I don't know if that was like Abe Lincoln, or I'm not up on American history, but that concept, a personal computer, is a computer that you can install and customize it to whatever your needs may be. And that's everything from, does it need a desktop, does it not, what type of desktop it needs, if it needs one, what kind of base, what's installed, what applications are running when it boots in, how you set it all up. Now, Linux, Unix, BSD, maybe not as much as Unix, but free software or open source software, FOSS, the whole concept, that truly is a personal computer. In the purest sense, it's a personal computer. There's thousands of different ways that you can use that, different distributions, and that you can install to customize it to your heart's content. It truly is a personal computer. It is a system of the people, by the people, for the people, rather than a corporate solution that's been handed down from insert company here. So that was just my point there, and I actually
think in that sense, Mint is a lot better than some of the other distributions, because it's a very community-oriented and a very small on the management side distribution. I think one of the things they do now is they decided not to use the Unity interface in the next release of Linux Mint.
I think with Mint. Oh, sorry, I forgot what I was talking about there. Yeah, the way that Mint sets out its distributions is because of the licensing they have. They have to have a version that's legally downloadable in the patent countries like the States and apparently Japan. That's the two countries that they'll single out. and that's what used to be called the Universal Edition. And you download that, and it did not have any MP3, did not have any Flash, did not have any of the codecs that had licensing or patent restrictions.